Welcome to What Just Happened. Today we welcome Nancy Mair. Hi, Nancy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're an expert in the off-price world, which is such a fascinating area of retail. I really can't wait to get into our discussion.
I love it. I love it. I started in college and it was hard to ever leave.
My first job in retail, corporate job in retail, not like a store level. I was the second hire in the J. Crew outlet division.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
So I was the do everything person to the person that was building the division, and she did everything. So I did everything. And it was such a great and interesting time to be not just in retail growth in brick and mortar, but also in off-price. That's my off-price background story. And it became such a huge business. So let's get your perspective.
It's funny you say that, because in off-price, everybody just has to dig in and do. There are definitely roles, but you have to be able to do anything, whether it's merchandising, planning, whatever it is, going back into the warehouse and sorting out dirty deals. You have to get your hands dirty. The retail model hasn't changed. It's having liquidity, going after the brands that people want, understanding what the out the door value needs to be, and turn your goods fast, because you need to create that flywheel so those footsteps constantly come into the door and see what's new.
There are more players and there are way more customers. A lot of D2C who have to pretty much buy their customers with discounts, and customer acquisition became extremely expensive. I feel like you guys have people falling into your doors, and that's a really great place to be.
People go to off-price because they may have an idea of what they're looking for, but they never know until they get there what they find. And then they walk out with something they didn't know that they needed, because the value is right there. They're delivering good quality, they're delivering brands, and wow, I didn't even know I needed that. I didn't even know I wanted it.
Another thing that is beneficial for off-price is people falling in the door. They have brands knocking on the doors a lot more now than before. Is that right?
That's right. That's right. People like to do business with off-pricers. Number one, because we pay our bills on time. Don't charge back for the most part. It's getting much more in order to get the goods to the floor fast. It does need to be packed right. It does need to be labeled. All that kind of stuff needs to happen in order for the goods to make it to the floor fast, to get turns, to reorder. So it's in a vendor's best interest to ship it correctly. We are happy and appreciative with all of our vendor relationships that we want to make sure we don't make it difficult to do business with, because there's many people to do business with, but paying on time, not charging back, knowing what they're going to get paid on their invoice is super, super important.
There were days where there was a time, I should say, where it was looked at as a ding.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, that's not good brand positioning. It's not, you don't want that customer
to think there's something wrong with it, or the brand is diluting, or all that kind of stuff. Yes, I agree.
And so that is gone, or that still is there a little? Is it like I guess you have a spectrum.
Yes, and it depends on how hot the brand is, right? And how much of an inventory they have. Yeah. They want to tell the customer that they have the best brands and the best trends. So for instance, if the color of the season is pink and there's no closeouts in pink, we should have pink on the floor. So we're going to have to find the vendors that are going to be able to supply that color pink to make so they look relevant on the floor. So there is made for off-price. There's made for outlet that they buy those goods. There's closeouts. There's definitely buying off the line at a discount. There's a lot of fabric opportunities that they turn into the best silhouettes at a price. So it's not just one way of buying. It's not like a department store product development or buying off a line. There's much more creativity and product development in off-price than you would think.
Is private label? Looks like a lot of private label.
There is private label. All off-pricers have a lot of private label. Yeah. They have their own made in Italy product, or they have their own brands that they have just slapped on a label. And look at the whole increase of the licensing of brands. So you look at an ABG, you look at a Blue Star, all these companies that are buying dying brands, licensing them out and building their marketing, all of that is made for. A lot of it is made for. A lot of it is licensed from an ABG, and they make their own goods in that label. So That's another way of making sure that they're getting brands. But the good thing about what off-pricers know, the value that they put on that ticket makes sense versus an inflated $98 item that really is a $12.99 t-shirt. So off-pricers always know value, and the formula that they look at to understand and determine the value, it's a combination of the quality of the product, how important that brand is, how relevant that fashion is it timely? And there's so many factors that go into it. Every buyer that I've worked for, worked under, worked over, understands how to determine the right out the door value for the item. And it's done literally by item. It's that hands-on.
What's the calendar here? Because you're buying in so many different ways, and manufacturing and buying manufacturing and licensing and licensed product. And it's not just, oh, it's sitting over there. You can it's Monday, you can have it Wednesday. What does that look like?
There's a rhythm to certain categories and how far out they need to be bought, how much liquidity you need to leave in season to chase. There's always things that come into play that you need to have some kind of liquidity in place. And when you're in the summer and the height of the summer, you don't really want to buy all of your summer short sleeve product up front or your shorts up front. You have no idea what the weather's going to be, how it's going to affect your business. So you want to leave money in season to be able to chase that. What needs to be bought up front? What do you want to stand for? How much can you leave in the moment?
So in off price, you're leaving a lot more to chase or for immediates. You can be more reactive. Right. Which one would argue, and one is this one, that's the more profitable way to run retail, regardless if you're in off price or otherwise. But the industry is not set up for that in other types of retail. Off price has that benefit. Independent stores have some of that benefit. They're not tied into those corners, those layouts, those brand relationships.
And you look at why the success of Abercrombie and Fitch is, and speeding up the supply chain, or having enough grayish goods in the right categories, but not really knowing what silhouette or what value is going to work, that they're able to cut really fast. More and more retailers need to have an improved supply chain, improved strategies that will give them the ability to react much more quickly than they can. Absolutely. My crystal ball never worked. You never know what you can think what the customer is going to want, but you never really know. So you want to be able to react. And every retailer should have that ability, not just off price.
No, you're absolutely right. That was the big success of Zara, the gray. Right. No one really talks about that anymore. Why is that? I guess because Shein and Temu now have just set the bar completely differently. Another benefit that off price has that I'd love to hear your thoughts on is standards are, if you're on LinkedIn, you're seeing, photos of people shopping. Look at this. Can you imagine? This is a store that should have great standards, and no one really talks about or cares or really feels like it's a detriment if you walk in and an off-pricer is a bomb.
My mind has shifted through the years, because back in the day, if you got the customer in the store, it didn't matter if it was in a shoebox, if it was on the floor, the customer found it, they bought it. It did not matter. Standards really didn't make a difference. But I do think that the whole Marmaxx company has done such an amazing job storytelling and editing and focusing the customer on what they want them to see, while making it shoppable by size and just easy to merchandise, easy to find your size in the category you're looking for. So I do think those things really do make a difference. The customer has many places to shop. There's so many choices right now. So standards now is much more important than it used to be. And I think that all off-pricers should focus on visual merchandising and make it easy to shop, while focusing the customer on what is important, what should be important to them. But if you're showing that expectation to the customer that that they categorize and size, and that's their agreement with the customer, this is what I'm offering to you, and then not fulfill it, it could ruin a relationship with a customer, because there are other off-price stores that really do focus on that. There's no walls in off-price. If footwear is doing really well and sweaters aren't, they'll shrink sweaters to grow their footwear business in the moment, because that's what's working. And I think that flexibility and agility in off-price is what makes it so much more successful than being regimented. It's not vendor driven. Back in the day, Nike promoted, this is the line you're going to carry in your store. The buyers go in to say, this is what I'm looking for based on how my customer is reacting, and this is what I need. If you have it, great. If you do not have what I'm looking for, then I move to the brand that does.
If you had to do a Venn diagram of like players, you have traditional off price, right? You have that here. And then is it fair to overlay it's not off price, but they meet somewhere, they overlay in this Venn visual, the Targets and the Walmarts?
Mm-hmm.
When you think about the competition and the market, the addressable market, and you're in strictly off price, you're looking at your left, you're looking right, you're looking behind you, who's our competition? And then you look left and you're like, we can't forget these guys too. That is a correct assumption?
I agree. I agree with that. I think when you look at a Target or a Walmart, their price points sometimes mirror the value. And it really comes down to value. Why should anyone be able to walk into a Target and pay $39 for denim when all off-pricers, their sweet spot is $19 to $29, depending on the price point, depending on the level of fashion it has. But I think if those also, and you can't just look at comp shop online, you have to walk into a store because most of the off-pricers don't have an online presence, or TJ's has one, but it's 1% of their business. So the only way you're really going to understand if you can be competitive is if you see what the values are across the board, from Target to Walmart to off-price. You look at Hollister for back to school, all their denim was $29.99. I haven't seen that in years. That makes sense to me. So I think that when it comes to price point and value, you have to look everywhere. But when you walk into a Macy's or a department store and their values are $49, $59 for their private label denim, you have to scratch your head and say, what am I missing here? Is the brand that good? Is the quality that much better? You have to look around. Target's quality is great on their denim, really great. It's not worth private label and some of these other retailers to spend that much more. It's just not, there's no reason to. People have to see the competitive landscape across the board. It's the combination of getting the product in there. It's all about product. People aren't going to walk into your store just because you're a nice person and willing to help. You have to have product that appeals to you, or you're discovering something. And I think that if you look at, unfortunately, everybody saw their Michael Kors business, and why that's struggling is just they've lost their shine. There's just not a lot of newness. And how much logo does someone need? How can you reinvent yourself? And if Macy's is filled with Michael Kors, is it Macy's fault that they can't sell Michael Kors, or is it Michael Kors's fault that they can't sell Michael Kors? Whereas if you're an off price, Michael Kors isn't selling, you buy a different brand that the customer is voting for.
We're at the end of our time here.
Okay.
This was really fun. You could go on forever from my perspective. I hope you had fun.
Yes, I did. Thank you for having me.
And that is what just happened. I'm Christine Russo.